I'm sitting in for Christina this morning. This is DRC for May 7th. First item is Black Hill in Up County, and Philip is the lead reviewer.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. That's right. I'm the lead reviewer. I'm here with our team today. We can just jump right in. You certainly have all of our sort of technical comments. Those are probably pretty straightforward. I think some of our major outstanding comments concern the site design. So I guess we can maybe start with those and highlight some of those issues that are still outstanding. I think big picture, we want to move closer to some of the master plan goals of quality design and making the community more pedestrian oriented. One issue, primary issue we have is some of the number of the units are not facing public space or a street, and also some concerns about the common open space, particularly I think the play area. And staff feels that the proposed design will help place more eyes on the public space, the public realm, and also that play area. So Jeff, if you could display the site design and maybe highlight some of those things, and then we can, or else maybe the applicant wants to just address those, however you want to do this, Jeff.
Let's have Jeff speak briefly about what was shared. Jeff is filling in for Roberta today, since Roberta's out today.
Okay.
Jeff can go over briefly what we had shared and the main thoughts behind it, and then maybe we turn it over to the applicant.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Jeff.
Okay, sure. Hi, good morning, everyone. Is my screen showing up?
It is, thank you.
Okay, very good. So these are concepts which have previously been shared. These were sort of the last things that we had prepared, looks like back in June of 2022. The primary concerns in a lot of ways still remain the same. So in these sketches that we provided, there are three concepts. I'll focus primarily just on this first one, because I think they all more or less capture some of the same concerns. So Philip did a great job sort of setting out the overview of our concerns. In the case of this concept, the whole driver for this was looking at the idea of trying to create a sense of community rather than orienting them along a service area. So an alley isn't always, well, is not the public space. It's not the public realm. So trying to orient these in a way that breaks up the units in a sense, orients them around public open space, connects it visually and physically to recreational amenities, and then organizes the units in a way that kind of helps to break it down so it doesn't feel like a large, massive block just oriented along a service drive, which would be the alley. So what you see here and looking at this layout, that's what this layout intends to do. While it doesn't hit I believe it was 69 units. I apologize. I don't know all the numbers offhand, but I know that this concept, one of the concerns and the feedback that we got from it was that it perhaps doesn't hit the same number of units as what was imagined for the site. But what's worth noting here, it does provide a muse from Crystal Rock Drive. It has 2 points of entry, so you have a means of circulating through the space. It provides parking for the units, and it also provides secure, visible connections to the picnic area, playground areas. These are really important amenities for the community, and visually they are directly connected with line of sight to the units, so they feel publicly accessible. So those were sort of the overarching big picture comments that we had in looking at this. I'm happy to flip through the other schemes if that's helpful, but they all more or less try to establish the same general idea. It's also worth noting that in all of these schemes, there is a clear distinction in having the fronts face out onto public open space, or face out towards public streets or towards public open space. So the units are oriented in a manner that front along that. One of the concerns we've had in looking at the orientation of the units is trying to distinguish fronts from backs and backs facing to fronts and so forth. And when they are sort of arranged in that fashion along that alley, it gets a little fuzzy as to what's the front and what is the back, and trying to make sense of that. So these schemes, that were previously prepared, really set out to try to do that. I'm happy to turn it over, but I also have I'm just going to share one thing here real quick. This is a sketch that was prepared within the last couple of days. So this is something that is fresh, it's, hot off the press, for lack of a better way of saying it, but it's something that we've not had time to share yet and circulate with everyone. So this scheme is, I would say, sort of revisiting some of the concepts and some of the ideas and comments that we've provided previously from the other sketches, but trying to work with it in a way that also respects what has been shared within the current set of drawings. So this scheme, what it does do, it does keep a similar type of layout as to what has been proposed. In this case, there is that service drive, but the alley is broken up with 2 curb cuts, much as you saw in the previous sketches. And there's also an opportunity to provide a loop. So where you see it labeled New Street, you have access to the alley, but then you also have this new street, which provides a number of parallel parking spaces for visitors. And then there's also dedicated parking at the ends to the left and to the right of the units. So you do have a distribution of public parking. Parking is a big concern. We've heard from a number of applications coming in that this is of growing concern within existing communities as well. So being cognizant of that and taking that into mind, this seemed like a good opportunity to try to introduce some of that within the scheme, while at the same time hoping to accomplish the goal of providing direct access, connected access to the playground and the amenities at the rear of the site. The units in the middle, if you look where it says Crystal Rock Drive and you see the orientation of the townhouse units, they're broken up by the introduction of a small mews, which then also provides a direct connection visually and physically from Crystal Rock Drive to the playground area. So you do have a pedestrian connection there, which helps to connect that. And then the units would all be rear loaded, but facing out towards public space. So with that, I'll wrap up and just turn it over or turn it back to you, Philip.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Jeff. And then we'll just turn it over for discussion to the applicant.
Sure. So thanks. We appreciate everyone's comments. I think that we certainly saw this. We were able to download it yesterday. Haven't had a chance to fully kind of evaluate it. I mean, there are a number of concerns that we have in terms of the feasibility, in terms of utility connections, what this does to the units themselves, eliminating all driveways, the feasibility of it given the expanded impervious area and the need for more stormwater and really no space to accommodate it. So our goal actually for DRC today has been to kind of go through some of the more comments that were interagency wide while we have everyone here to kind of talk through a lot of those, realizing we probably need a separate follow-up meeting with you all, which maybe we could do at that spot next Tuesday to kind of dig into the layout comments that we received in more detail after we have a chance to also put together, more information on our end to have a meaningful discussion on it. So if we can, if that's okay with you, kind of shift some of the comments that I think involve multiple agencies while we're here, we'll dive in. So I think there were several comments regarding the retaining wall, some of which I think are easy. I think there was a question to add, top of wall height, bottom of wall height. We certainly can provide that on the plan. But Pat, do you want to kind of give a little bit more explanation, context for the retaining wall and the challenging grades on site?
Yeah, so, and like Liz said, we can absolutely add the additional sort of labeling to the spots that are in there. Kind of hard to see because they're small text. But what we have here, generally speaking, is that in the center of the property, it's more or less flat from front to back. But as you go to either direction, left or right, you get a valley on one end and a hill on the other. So we have a cut and a fill situation on either end of the property as you look left and right on the screen. I think particularly perhaps what Doug mentioned was on the left side of the screen, that wall is awful close to the conservation easement. Well, all the walls are close to the conservation easement. And that side isn't cut. So on the left side of the screen, we're shearing down. So we are aware of that. Our thought there is that would probably be a permanent sheet and shoring system. We just did this at you can go see it. It's built now at Montgomery College, the PIC MC site. That same situation, it was right against the easement. They just, sheared it down and built a wall in front of it. There's no footing or anything like that. So regardless of the easement, if our LOD is going to be where it is, we just need probably have that kind of wall system here. In order to, to avoid that, we have to be grading back into the forest conservation easement 30 feet or something, not to mention like layback if you had a traditional wall system. So we're confident that can be built as shown there without encroaching on the easement with a footing or anything like that. And on the right side, luckily we have the opposite. So we have a fill situation. So we'll just be working up from the toe of the hill, probably with like a segmental system where it's just simply a fill system. And therefore we should be able to on both ends of this thing.
Yeah, that was my comment, because historically we don't allow footers or any construction within the Cat 1 easements. And also what we found over time is that, especially on the right side of the property where it's going to be filled, there really needs to be a maintenance strip at the base of that wall so that the wall can be, over time, can be maintained. And so when the FCP was showing that wall, the face of the wall up against the conservation easement, it's like, okay, there's two things. One is the footer being in the easement, but two is also the necessary room for maintenance to get into that wall and take care of it. It sounds like on the left side with the sheeting shoring, that's not going to be a problem. But on the right side, I mean, the expansion of my comment was to try backing the wall up 8 to 10 feet to give the room, get the footer out, that kind of thing. I'm going to say, is that possible? But I know from a grading standpoint, that really plays with
Yeah, you
the
can
cut
see it
and
on
fill
this.
that you've got.
You can't see it on this sheet, but like the next one, you can see all those contours there. So there's quite a surcharge slope on the top of it. I mean, we can certainly look at moving it a little bit and we have to figure out what that right number is. Because that's going to be a system without a footer, so to speak. We don't have that issue. It's just that whatever we might feel like we need for maintenance. So
there's no footer on that portion of the wall then?
no, the segmental block walls, I mean, basically you have a gravel strip at the bottom, it's just a bed, and then they just build the blocks up with the grid. So there's no footer because it's a reinforced earth section. So, looking on the screen, if you're looking towards the houses, there's just geogrid every foot or 8 inches or whatever it is in the lifts. And it's a wedge of reinforced earth. And the blocks are just a aesthetic piece. They're just something that holds the face together. That could actually be vegetated. We've done walls like that have vegetated faces.
Oh,
I don't think I've seen that.
I've been out of design way too long.
Well, you've seen those big tall block walls that have, been built lately.
Right,
Those
and I'd always assumed there's a footer.
It's just reinforced earth. Big wedge of reinforced earth. So that helps on that side of not having a footer. Now, if you did a concrete wall or something, you're right. We'd have a footer, you have layback, all that stuff.
That's what I was thinking. Especially because wall appeared to be like 8 to 10 feet in height. I thought, okay, you're going to need some type of footer for this thing.
Yeah, not with a block, not with I should call them reinforced earth.
Interesting. Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of the wall part of that. And then just additionally, going back to the layout before, the big challenge here is we have a property that has a very limited depth, right? We've got, however many acres of forest conservation and park dedication behind it. And we're left with a very thin sliver. So those ends, those wings of the property get very, very tight with the grading. One side it's cut, one side it's filled. So although like in the layout, for example, that was provided by Roberto, I think and I know it was referred to as an alley, but what we have here is more than an alley because there's much more room. There's driveways, there's a sidewalk on one side, there's a lot more activity there. But if you eliminate those and what Roberto did was shift everything down so that it is a bare bones alley, you do open up space in the back, but then when you add the road in, you sort of lose that space and actually go beyond this line of building that we have here. So that gradient becomes a real problem. And as you can see on not this sheet, but the others, we've got all these stormwater cells down there. So a big concern of ours is, the added impervious area of the road. And then, can we even accommodate stormwater for all of this plus a road in that new limited space? And
We also have utilities, have
Well,
the transformers.
electric.
Yeah, there's what's reflected, and this ties into some of the comments about circulation. You can kind of see on some of the end units on the front against Crystal Rock, they're, shifted over and there's no sidewalk in some of those locations. And that's because if you look on Street View or go out to the site, you can see there's these big Potomac Edison installed these big electric switches, these big green boxes that we can't move. So those are a little bit of an impediment. And, again, referring back to the layout Roberto did, I think he kind of shifted some of the units over to make up in other areas. So, that's the big challenge with that. One of the bigger challenges of that layout is really the stormwater aspect. And because this is a greenfield development, we're 100% ESD. We don't really have, it'd be probably very difficult to convince DPS to do underground practices and things like that if they even work. And the other concern, just while we're talking about it, would be, that when you have an alley like that, that's very narrow, say 30 feet, you really can't fit the wet utilities back there. Can't fit the water and sewer. So they need to be fed from the fronts, which theoretically work on the through street in the back, but along Crystal Rock Drive, that means you have water and sewer connections for every single unit along that street, which, not only interrupts the existing built, brand new sidewalk and stuff, but there's stormwater cells all along that frontage that treat Crystal Rock Drive. And I don't think we can cross them, 60 times with 30 water and sewer connections. So, and we can talk about that more next week, but that just.
Yeah. There was one more comment on the retaining wall that we just wanted clarification on. There was a comment regarding needing to seek planning board approval for a wall that was over 6.5 feet in height. And I'm certainly aware of the provision in the code that exempts a wall less than 6.5 feet in height from the setback and building restriction requirements. But the walls, since this is a CR zone property, are meeting the setback requirements because it's a 0 foot condition. So I just wanted to see clarity on what that, I think it was comment 27 on the same plan.
Yeah, it's a zoning comment. Good morning. This is Melissa Kutos. I was going to say that while we were talking about walls, but it quickly transitioned into the ESD conversation. So I wasn't sure if you wanted me to go back and say that, but yeah, the site plan should have your top of wall and bottom of the wall noted on the plans for permits, because if it's not on the CSP, we wouldn't have that. We don't have authority for over 6.5 feet in height. We've had this with other site plans. I think it would be part of the review for a permit.
So sorry, Melissa, just to clarify, the comment is just that if we're showing the top of wall and the bottom of wall height, and that's part of our site plan that gets approved by the board, that's just what you need at permit stage?
Correct. Yeah, we would need that to confirm that it was approved as part of the CSP.
Okay.
We'll add, there's spots, we'll just add some text.
Yes. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Also, the location of the walls would be limited to what's shown on the CSP.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay. So there was two other clarification. I guess these are really just more we were going to provide clarification about in the PUE. I think Sam had.
Yes, Sam, this, you might remember from years ago, maybe everybody's forgot, this whole development was master planned without PUEs. The idea was to have the street activation as much as possible, therefore not lose that 10 feet at the front, urban design. So that's been the case throughout Black Hill. This frontage actually, however, does have a Potomac Edison easement 10 feet wide along the frontage existing additions. Not the entirety of the frontage, but most of it. And that was because when they installed the substation that's out there now, they needed to run certain feeders, and that's the only way they could do it. So our plan was not to, grant a new PUE, but just to leave that Potomac Edison easement that's there. They're the only ones that needed it. The gas and the communication has all been sort of master planned through the community. We're
not running dry utilities longitudinally along the frontage, are we?
Not the plan right now. What Potomac Edison's infrastructure is already in there. Actually, I take that back. I think there is actually in that same easement. I think we were proactive and put some communication conduits in there, in coordination with them, just in case.
Right. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you have, it appears like steps and stoops in that easement. Is that correct?
No,
does
the easement stops at the second driveway on the left.
Okay.
So the steps that are created, that's that grade issue I was talking about. The steps on the left are actually as that easement ends. And that's sort of critical too, to allow those to, because we have to get up to these units. So we don't want to add, a PUE where we didn't need to have more easement.
I'd like to see a letter from them because they are more strict than Pepco, that they are accepting of those concrete walkways in their easement.
Just you're talking about just the lateral crossings, the ones that cross it perpendicularly. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Or whatever else you put in there. Anything you put in there, I want to make sure, I want to see a letter from them saying they would accept that.
That's fine. I mean, we have that, they have easements, the same easements throughout the apartments complex that's built out across the street. They go through the parking lot and sidewalks, everything. So we can get something from Telekis.
Okay.
As long as, I'm sorry, do you want to?
Good. No, go ahead.
I mean, the only reason I brought up the PUE was we don't want not having PUE. Just all dry utilities to go along the front and inside the right of way. As long as that's not the case, the PUE is not of any concern. Can you provide a note to the extent of the plan?
Yeah, I think we may have a conceptual utility plan.
Can you put a note, general note to the extent on the cover sheet? That would be great.
Okay, and then there was just another comment, I think, Sam, that you had regarding kind of ensuring that these private streets were built to public road standards. I think just thought we were just going to clarify that because it's all going to be constructed as one lot, they won't actually be private streets.
Yeah, so it's like a drive-by or something.
Yeah, it's basically, I mean, the idea is this is going to be one big property, similar to like a multifamily property, where it's just internal networks. And that's also why we didn't have truncation. I think that was another comment that Liz will bring up, is that there's no subdividing going on. So
Yeah, okay. I mean, if you don't have any private road, then I guess that the comment is no longer applicable.
Okay, moving to height, there were a couple comments regarding height. We just wanted to seek clarification on one about providing setbacks and height for accessory structures. Melissa, I think that was your comment too. I just wanted to clarify what you were looking for with that, and what accessory structures were kind of you wanted us to show that for. Is that the two shade structures we have?
Yeah, the pavilions for the walking paths, those need to be shown before permit. Like, we need them as part of the CSP to show what the height is that's approved and the setbacks.
Okay.
For
Great.
each of them, they need to be on your site plan, and the height of the units, we don't know how you're calculating it, but we assume that you wanted to use the T-zone averaging for heights. Is that the case?
That was actually our next clarification we were going to ask for. So no, we're not using the height averaging. I think you also had another comment just regarding adding the building height measuring point for each of the sticks, which we could certainly do to clarify, but we weren't using the height averaging.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we needed some clarification on how you want us to measure the height for the reviews, because if you're not using the averaging, our default would be to measure height for every unit individually.
that's fine too. If so, your preference, Melissa, would be to do that, or as opposed to each stick, if it's not using that height averaging?
Well, you have options in the height section, so you have to decide how you want it measured before the CSP gets approved. But I think usually there would be like a building height measuring point, or you would show how you're averaging height in a height exhibit. And there's another project where they did that for the Cabin John Shopping Center or Village. So you could look that up if you want to average building height, but it's up to you. We just have it as part of the items that are established by the site plan approval process.
Yeah, we're well under the height limits here, so I think we'll just stick with the standard method of measuring height.
Okay, but from what point? Is there a building height measuring point that you've identified?
Well, it sounds like we'll need to add,
I think we'll add it for each unit. Unless I heard correctly, I think we'll just add it for each unit. Maybe we'll do a table or something, the plans, if that's okay.
Yeah, as long as there's a point that we know to reference.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, great. That's helpful clarification. The next comment that we want to discuss was regarding, I think it was Henry's comment about overflow discharge. Pat?
Yeah, Henry and Doug. So we have this, because of the way the topography works and the drainage and everything like that, we do have sort of the site split. Half of it, we're able to get back out to Crystal Rock Drive in the storm drain system. Other half, unfortunately, we need to make an outfall towards the conservation easement. So our initial effort was to stay out of the conservation easement, create a protected armored outfall at the edge of it. I know there was concern about the downhill of that. Is there going to be erosion? Again, our goal was to try to stay out of the conservation easement, and that's how we've designed it now. If there's a desire to extend that, we can certainly look at that, but I know it's kind of balancing interest between staying out of the conservation easement and potential erosion in the future. I mean, again, we have a system that's supposed to be designed for a non-erosive manner. But Doug, I don't know if you have any feelings on that one way or the other.
Well, when I saw it on the plan, I had two concerns. One is the easement and potential erosion coming out of this, because often that riprap doesn't work the way we would like it to. And also it struck me as the outfall is coming out at the base of the retaining wall. So once again, the erosion over time, I had concerns about the stability of that portion of the wall. And I have seen several plans now where they instead of the standard outfall, they do like a drop pool method. And maybe that's something that could work. In this case, a minor encroachment into the easement, maybe something we could live with the eye toward, well, it's better than the standard approach in this case because of the slopes. That's certainly something we can look at.
I think we can also look at it on the screen. I think we could probably return that wall, so it's not directly against it. We could probably turn the wall back into the hill to open up some more space and give you more of that sort of plunge pool, and also keep the wall further away from it. Right. So we can explore that. I don't know if Henry's on, if he has any thoughts either, but
yeah, that I think Doug hit it, and exploring that's exactly kind of what we're looking for. I think you're right on, and it's not parkland, so we're deferring to Doug on what's worth the trade-offs and putting into the easement there. But we're always really worried about that. We're down at the bottom of the hill with the stream there, so anything we can do to help beef it up, we're looking to help out with.
I've seen a couple new applications where they use almost like Gabion walls at the outfall to create that kind of plunge pool. And maybe that's something you can do, sort of a 3-sided or 4-sided, little thing. So we can look at something like that.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Yeah, Pat, if we need to, meet up or, touch base, we're open to that.
Good.
Great. And then there was a few DOT comments we wanted to walk through. Pat, do you want to take those?
Sure. There was one was about this. We talked about truncate. Rebecca, I think you're on here, and I don't know if Deepak is. I think I mentioned the truncation. Our thought is we're not subdividing it, so we wouldn't do any kind of corner truncation. There really aren't any corners to truncate. So unless you disagree, that's how we would proceed there.
That's fine.
And then on the street parking, we did, I think that was sort of a comment both from staff and DOT about considering street parking on Crystal Rock, which under existing conditions, there's actually, there is street parking allowed at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And the concern from DOT, the parking folks, I think was there's a lot of drop trailers and things that park in Germantown on the side of the street overnight, and they didn't want that to be happening in this community. So we looked at that as part of this application and our site distance and everything like that. And right now, the site distance criteria would actually, as the road stands today, really you couldn't have almost any parking along the frontage just for site distance purposes. Now, if we look at moving the travel lane out, you could potentially get a little bit, but what the challenge is, you're coming off of this, imagine driving around the traffic circle and coming towards the site from right to left. You have a sort of a quick need to channelize, and that's a little awkward. And I don't know if we could make that work fast enough to get any parking, or maybe get a space. So it's something maybe we could offline, Rebecca and Deepak and I and whoever could look at. But it seems like because of site distance reasons, parking is going to be a challenge on the street with the 2 curb cuts we have.
Okay. I think we should probably look at it.
Okay.
I think Brenda is the reviewer on this project.
Oh, sorry, Brenda, if you're on here.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
So I think we need to probably talk to consider parking. But, for DTOA should probably be involved in that.
Okay, well, but maybe we could just set up a separate discussion about it and we can walk through we have a site distance exhibit we can show you and all that.
I hear the concerns that you're bringing up with the street parking. I think that even if we can have a limited number of on-street parking would be helpful and beneficial, even if we cannot do the full extent because of what you just said. So let's try to keep that in mind as we explore.
There is that, so on the rest of the campus, just to be clear, there is also, throughout the community, there's street parking, same 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So this frontage is, subject to the new site distance standards, but just to be clear, there's also street parking out there today on the rest of it.
Said parking is allowed 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So during the day, but not during the night. Is that something that you're considering to revisit as the project gets completed and more people move in and you have more need for parking potentially overnight?
I think, well, the original restriction was actually DOT's decision. They were concerned about,
DOT.
commercial vehicles parking
Okay.
there overnight. Now, I don't know that the owner would have to weigh in on it too. The owner would have to, we would do it. I guess the owner would do it. So we could talk to DOT if they would lift that restriction.
Yeah, I think we should definitely have that conversation, especially as we continue talking about this.
How long are your driveways?
You mean
Sidewalks?
wide, you're saying, Rebecca?
No, length.
From like street to street, if you will.
No, from back of sidewalk to the face of the building.
18 feet. The drive.
Oh, the driveways for each individual unit.
Oh, in the back of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 18 feet, yes. Yeah, so there's 18 feet on both sides, just the one side has the dedicated sidewalk and the street buffer.
If you're not getting any kind of, any street trees in there, then I'm not sure why you wouldn't put the sidewalk on the curb. Because that sidewalk is gonna be blocked. That's likely to be blocked. I mean, I don't know. I don't know that sidewalk really works. Like, it just could be increasing imperviousness and you might want to just let them walk in the drive lane.
I think we do have some trees. They're
So-
actually, we do have trees that are behind the sidewalk though, in between each driveway. So you can look at L401 if I'm supposed to bring it up, but we do have trees on both sides.
Okay. Okay, I mean, I'm just saying, obviously I have no real, authority in that, but to me, it just doesn't, it seems like you're just getting more imperviousness and the sidewalk's gonna be blocked by especially if you're not putting a tree in between the sidewalk and the driveway, meaning the drive lane.
Well, I think one thing Rebecca will clarify with Maurice mentioned, there was a comment regarding the parking, so we'll clarify that the parking is being accommodated within the garages for these units.
Yeah, but so that's the problem we have, is we know that, we understand that, but people use it for storage. And then they come to us after the fact and complain about parking. And so we've have several developments in the county that have asked us to add more parking, and basically we don't have any space. So my concern is that, and these are rentals, so maybe they won't have as much space, or maybe they will just keep their stuff in their garage and then they'll park their cars on the drive lanes. You give people options and they will use it. So if you have a 5-foot driveway and they can't park their car there, then they'll most likely try to park it in the garage, or they'll come to the county and say, we need more parking. In this case, I understand it's rentals, but we are dealing with this, and even in single family developments. So we are very concerned about lack of parking. And I see you've provided parking, but it's still a concern of ours.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I think once the full driveway.
Yeah.
Right, but they're not gonna park in the garage, most likely.
I think
That's
this
not true.
discussion ties in with the discussion on layout that we want to have with you next week, a week from today when we meet. Because, the internal layout that we are, recommend or suggesting that you reconsider, I think ties into some of this driveway and sidewalks and, circulation. So let's
We can wrap it
continue
executive
with that.
session.
I think for the purposes of, the coordination that we need to do on Crystal Rock to have the parallel on street parking, I think that Rebecca, I just wanted to ask, is your team the one that would be discussing or exploring this parking restrictions on Crystal Rock Drive that we potentially want to
No,
revisit?
we'd have to get Mark DTOE involved in that.
Yeah, Mark was the one who originally reviewed the signage plan, so we can loop Mark into the discussion.
So I think that's going to be really important because especially as we add more residential to the project and more people move in and live here, I think the need for parking overnight is going to be really critical. So if we can maybe lift some of those restrictions, I think it would really help with the parking needs. Not to mention that the on-street parallel parking would also serve as a traffic calming measure for Crystal Rock and making it more pedestrian. So it's kind of a dual goal that we're trying to accomplish here.
I'll reach out to DOT folks about it.
Perfect, thank you.
The last thing on the DOT list was, maybe Sam too, there was a couple comments about, ADA ramps and so forth. So, everything that's out there was very recently built. So, it all should be, and we've, monitored the construction, should all be ADA compliant. And obviously our crossings with our driveway are going to be at grade. They show ramps, but that's just because it's more like a, what do you call it, an apron, if you will. But it's at grade, so that's an at grade crossing. But just wanted to make sure there's no glaring issues that anybody noticed from DOT or DPS. It's more just a general comment. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I mean, the improvements are fairly recent. And also, as you said, I think the ramp needs to be needed because it's got a great crossing of the two driveways. But I just need some additional information. I'm not sure if you're referring to DOT's comments or our comments. For example, do you see that sidewalk at either end, it just ends?
Oh, that's just a drafting thing.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, we'll fix that. Yeah.
Stuff like that that needs to be addressed. So make sure that maintain continuous sidewalk and connectivity. Rebecca, do you have any other thing about the ADA you want to mention too?
Do I?
I just wanted to make sure that everything was per standards. That was just more of a general comment from my side.
Yeah, we'll confirm that. The response.
Great. And then Pat, I think there was one more you wanted to address in terms of some of the sidewalk connections with the email we got.
Yeah, there's, like I mentioned, it's kind of hard, well, you can sort of see it here. I mean, on for example, on the end unit that's to the left of the driveway on the screen into the site, you can kind of see there's a pretty significant setback from the curb, and then you can see the dash line. That's that easement. So those big green boxes Potomac Edison installed are sitting there. And that's why not only is the unit pushed back, but that's why we don't have a sidewalk on that side. And that's all live infrastructure for that substation. So it's probably impossible to move. But that's one reason why on that location, and there's one other that we don't have a sidewalk connection. And then there's a few others that were marked up in the comments, where there's stormwater in the way of a sidewalk connection, or like on the right side off the page here where we have the rear units next to the pavilion, there's like 7 feet of grade change. So we'll look at some areas like that and see if we can add stairs or if we can meander things, but there's a couple areas where it's just tricky. So we'll try to mark something up and accommodate what we can.
And we're going to talk about next week too.
Yeah, that's yeah.
So you're saying on the left-hand side here of the page, the sidewalk doesn't continue?
No, that does. Yeah,
Oh, we can-
these are all internal sidewalks I'm speaking of.
Okay.
Off the page there to the left, there is a sidewalk that continues with a pretty nice buffer. It really, where you see that sidewalk truncating down and minimizing, that just follows the curve. I think the layering was messed up in this image. So it goes all the way down to the WCC substation. There was a comment, I think maybe Henry brought up that the desired connection to the park is not through the property, and to look at that connection. We did look at that. That does meet, PLOC standards. So it's like 5 or 6 feet wide. It's heavily buffered. So I think it's an adequate connection. But let us know if there's something else that someone's looking for there.
So you'll be able to have a continuous connection to the trailhead that we have on the left of the
Yeah, we'll
page.
fix this plan. That's just,
Right.
it's just.
Okay. Appreciate the clarification. Henry, do you want to comment on anything that was said about parks? Comments?
No, I think we're good. Yeah, if it wasn't so steep and wild down in there, then we'd want to do the trail back into the park that way, but not gonna work with the main stem of the creek back there, so glad to.
You reach
Glad-
out just to have a follow-up conversation to make sure we understand that too, just because we really thought that would be a great benefit to kind of provide that trail connection there. But understand you're kind of looking at different data, so we may just want to connect offline on that to make sure we understand it.
Yeah, sure. Happy to have you guys chat with Bob, our natural surface trail builder, for why he's not comfortable with that. But the short version is it's really steep and there's not a good way to get all the way down in there across the creek and back up in a way that we think is sustainable and good.
And also something to keep in mind are the terms of the conservation easement itself. It precludes any construction. So with the grade being what it is, I don't see a way of putting a trail in there without having to build a stepped kind of system, which then violates the terms of the easement.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask that, so we're not gonna add the trail connection or to the park, let's say. But there was always master planned to be this natural surface trail through this part of the campus, and then it connects to the hard surface trail. And the way we've drawn it there, and that's why it's kind of straight, if you will, is it's intended to kind of follow the contours.
Yeah.
I always thought, Doug, for that trail, like there'd almost have to be like a field walk to verify the.
Well, Pat, the one that runs horizontally in the plan view is fine.
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
as long as we can, connect it around, it's that one that
Yeah.
juts off to the
Perpendicular.
northeast,
Yeah, that one we could.
which drops down. That was where, Henry and I had talked about that and the grade issue with that trail. That's really, I mean, the other trail going horizontal, north-south-ish
That's okay.
is fine.
Okay, great.
Those are all the comments we wanted to clarify today. Yep.
Okay, you mentioned in the beginning that you'd like to have a follow-up meeting.
Yeah.
Who would you want in that meeting?
I think it's really a design meeting with park and planning to get into the layout design comments.
I can send you.
I'll just send it to your lead reviewer. You can-
We'll distribute. That's fine. That works.
All right, sounds good.
Next Tuesday.
For next Tuesday, yes, yeah.
And Phil, do you have the date handy that we can connect offline on in terms of our first resubmittal date?
Can I
Yeah.
email those to you?
We can-
Yeah,
Yeah.
Either 2 weeks from today or 2 weeks tomorrow,
I
usually
think
it's.
it is 2 weeks from today, but I can send you those deadlines, yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Intake and Regulatory Coordination Division, and this is the DRC meeting for Darnestown Meadows. Your lead reviewers, Ugo and Jesse, and this meeting is being recorded and live streamed. The purpose of this meeting is for you to ask any questions based upon the comments you received last week. I'll ask Ugo first to highlight any of the major items we should discuss and then turn it over to the applicant. Go ahead, Ugo.
Morning, County Planning Division. The review for Darnestown Meadow project. The major comments that we have from the planning standpoint is planting along the front of the two lots and across the lot line to keep the rural character of the area. We also have some transportation considerations for improvements to the front. It is a state highway, so we are referred to that. There is a comment about the memorial garden in the front of the lot where the existing church is. Ignore those ones. It does not apply for a garden being in the village setback. But those are our initial ones. I'll open up for you as the applicant in your team.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dylan Macro. I'm with McCrease Henderson Glascock. We're the civil engineers on the project, and I'm here with Jeff Fuller of St. Nicholas Parish and Bob McCartan, St. Nicholas Parish. I think, we'll just jump right to the chase. I think our biggest question and item we wanted to talk about with staff today were the requested frontage improvements for the side path along Germantown Road. Just to give you a little background, this property had been subdivided into two lots previously under plat 22190, and the applicant was looking to go back to that same lot configuration and development scheme. The intent here would be to subdivide lot 7 into two new lots. Lot 9 would be on the eastern portion of the property, and lot 10 would be the western portion of what is now lot 7. Lot 10 on the western portion currently has the existing church, which is going to remain. There's no planned improvements for that property. Lot 9 the plan is to sell that in the future to a developer. We're currently showing the single family home on that as illustrative just for the purposes of the administrative subdivision application, but there are no plans right now for construction on that lot. The church's plan here really is to just go back to the original configuration shown on plat 22190 with the intent of selling newly created lot 9 on the eastern side of the property. So as you can understand, for them having to construct the side path improvements for the bicycle master plan is a pretty significant hardship on the project, given the length of the frontage improvement and the planned development. It's a pretty small or very small residential development, being only one single family home that can be developed on that lot with the density restrictions. So for any developer putting up a single family home, the cost of frontage improvements for that length of frontage is substantial. And in most cases, it's probably as much as it would cost to develop the property. So we would like to see if staff has any thoughts or considerations to a de minimis fee in lieu payment or even other measures to accommodate those frontage improvements without having to have the church build them at this phase in the project.
Hi, this is Deepak Samrajan. That's in my letter. Those are the recommendations as far as DOT is concerned, but this is maintained by the state. So you may want to reach out to State Highway, what their thoughts are. But
yeah, no, we understand. I was hoping someone from State Highway would be on the call today. It looks like Quasi's here. I'm not sure if he has any thoughts or had a chance to look at that. Hey, Quasi, how you doing?
Pretty good. What was that question again?
Well, as a part of the review, as part of the application, the applicant was requested to make frontage improvements along Germantown Road.
Okay.
That include a 10-foot buffer and a 10-foot wide asphalt side path along the frontage, which is about 650 feet.
And that's what we're looking at right here, that frontage. I mean,
That's,
that,
yeah, we're showing it for illustrative purposes right there.
okay,
But what if the lot number 9 on the eastern side of the page there, the eastern side of the plan, is developed in the future by a developer, there would be one new point of access along Germantown Road for the driveway,
okay,
which is what we're showing. The bicycle master plan calls for that side path as well, which was requested as part of the initial review here by DOT.
okay. And I guess you want to know if SHA would support having the path?
Well, DOT is requesting that the applicant either install the path or grade the path out. The applicant's not planning to build anything at this time.
Right.
Given the length of the frontage improvements and the fact that there really is no connection there, we have basically a 650-foot long section of side path that goes nowhere. And the planned development is for a single family residence. The cost to build a side path and grade it out and provide stormwater management permitting is going to be basically make the project infeasible for the applicant.
Right. I mean, at the very least, I think it could be graded. I understand it's costly. We had one of these in the past. In the past, it was a lot shorter. It was only 200 feet, and we didn't require them to do it. But I mean, this, like you said, it doesn't connect to anything. So I would recommend at least grade it, so it's in the future it could be installed or constructed.
Okay. But at what's the trigger? At what point would that grading or construction be required? Would that be prior to access permit?
It would be part of the access permit.
So if through the yeah, go ahead.
No, so you're not the access we're looking at. This is not being constructed now.
No.
Okay. So I mean, if that's the case, you will not need an access permit if you're not doing the access point now. But at the point when you come in to do that, then that's when you need the access permit, and that's when the grading will be part of that.
No, we understand. I think for the
Okay.
church, their intent is to sell that lot. They don't want to get into a position where they can't get through the administrative subdivision process and a record plat without having to construct that. You know, that's something that they would prefer not to have to construct. If it was required, they'd like to be able to negotiate a fee in lieu with the potential buyer and planning staff, but there are no plans to develop that lot right now. They have to go through the they have to go through this application process and record plat, and then they can eventually, try to sell that portion of the property to a developer, lot 9 on the east. And at that time, the developer would come in for permit plans, access permit,
right,
all that stuff.
All right. Okay. So I guess that's when the grading or the path would be constructed.
Okay. Okay. Would planning staff consider a fee in lieu payment? I mean, that seems like an awful lot of grading. There's trees, utility poles, there's a culvert there. I mean, it's not a simple grading exercise to create a 2-foot wide path. There's pretty substantial. It's a pretty substantial design effort and construction effort to have to do that. It seems like a fee in lieu payment would be more applicable here. That way, when other properties along that section of Germantown Road develop, that payment could be put towards the larger scale improvements along Germantown Road, as opposed to just grading out a section that, would have to be stabilized, rebuild culverts. It just seems like it's it's not, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have to do that now, but maybe when future lots adjacent to ours develop, then that would be the time to kind of do a large section of side path.
Yeah, I'll jump in really quickly. This is Florence Dwyer, transportation planner with Up County. I'll let others jump in as well if needed, but for our, de minimis policy, it doesn't meet the requirements for a fee in lieu instead. So per our like standards, it would have to be built, but for
Yes, that is correct, and that's why our comments and recommendation is just like DOT to either build a path or to grade it. We thought at a minimum you could grade it, which would be much less costly than full construction. So we thought that was already helpful, given the concerns that you're raising.
Okay, well, I think that's something we'll have to talk about with the applicant here offline. I don't know if Jeff or Bob had anything they wanted to add to that, but we can talk about it offline after the DRC call.
You have any other questions about other comments?
No, I think all the other comments on the application were pretty straightforward. I didn't have anything else that I wanted to bring up on this call.
Did we understand all the forest conservation issues going on, Dylan?
We do. We do have some questions on that I know Frank Johnson in our office is coordinating with Josh Penn and
That's me. That's why I was asking the question.
Yeah, and Josh Kay. So Frank's got a few calls out now. I guess our biggest question is, it seems unreasonable to hold up forest conservation plan approval for a notice of violation that was served on a property that's not ours. We actually were specifically told not to include lot 8 on our administrative subdivision plan.
Well,
So I don't.
for administrative subdivision, you're correct. For forest conservation, it's an existing forest conservation plan that it covers all 3 pieces of land. So under the forest conservation law, the forest conservation plan is one plan. We cannot amend an existing plan not in conformance, and that's the issue.
But it seems like you are forcing the church into a contract with the property to the north. Like, what if the property to the north says we're not?
Then it would be on the applicant of this application to make the whole forest conservation plan in compliance. But right now, as shown, the forest conservation plan is not in compliance.
But
therefore cannot be approved.
How would they have authorization to bring someone else's property into compliance?
They could remove those easements and replace them elsewhere, either on-site or off-site. But as it sits, the forest conservation plan is not in compliance, therefore cannot move forward.
Okay. Well, like I said, we're having discussions offline with other folks down at planning, and I'm sure Frank will loop you in. But it sounded like Josh Kay was considering what we were proposing, and I think it would be a better move to make this 2 separate notices. That way each party could address it separately. But
well, I'm going to be the reviewer on the regulatory application, so that is the official standpoint of the law.
Okay.
So when Frank's ready, have him reach out to me.
Okay, sounds good.
I see, Bob, that you have your hand up. You're muted. I can't hear you if you're talking.
You're still muted. There you go.
Okay, great. Sorry for the confusion. I wasn't able to get on quickly enough when we were talking about the bike lane and what needs to be done. One of our potential buyers intends to leave the property as it is. that means there would be no access to a new access to Route 28, and it would continue to be a cornfield. And at a reasonable price. We can't make a deal yet because all this needs to be done. But does that have any impact on the bike stuff? Because I don't see anywhere else on 28 anywhere near us that anybody's done anything. So I'm kind of wondering if we're the guinea pig there for this activity in this area of the county. It's kind of weird.
No, this is Rebecca. You're not the guinea pig. We ask for you all to provide the right of way, and then I thought we were only asking for you to grade on your site so that in the future, when the facility can be put in place or the county decides to put in place, that it would be graded out. The facility is shown so that the credit can be you can pay the site into the sidewalk CIP, I believe, or the payment into the bike facility. There are a significant amount of bikers on this roadway.
Sure.
And
Very popular.
so there are other developments that we ask for you to grade on site, and we've asked for them to do that as well.
In addition to the CIP payment?
Yes.
So the grading and then the CIP for whatever remains as far as the section asphalt.
So you would grade out to provide some kind of, I'm not sure exactly what we specifically said.
Sure.
But it would be grading out and then, the payment for the shared use path.
So across the street from us, we have land for the local Catholic Church. They have a lot of land there. Have they done anything? Have they responded to this in any way? I mean, we got a lot of church property right around there, and usually we think of that as, given our tax exempt status, that this seems a little weird for this to be asked of us.
This is our standard request that we ask for it's a state roadway, but we do, the planning staff and DOT, we ask for these, for your site frontage to be improved when you redevelop, or in this case, you add a lot.
Well, yeah, if we separate our property, we're not adding anything. It's going away. The lot goes to whoever buys it, right?
Right. So you're subdividing property, and this is the time that we request this improvements along your frontage. And I think that was conveyed in an email.
Bob, and if it is helpful, go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you. It's like, this is, to Rebecca's point, this is a, standard subdivision requirements of anyone that files. If they're subdividing, adding, some type of development, need the regulatory approval, we'll measure that against the master plan and any, anything in chapter 50 and make our recommendations for improvements.
I hear you, but we are not developing anything. All we're doing is creating two lots out of one. If someone buys it, they may do that, but that's them, not us. So I'm a little puzzled.
Sure. Are you selling the property to someone else who's then going to subdivide it? Or you're subdividing it and you're selling the lot, right?
We're creating two lots out of one, whatever that means in the language you're using.
Yes, you are subdividing your property, and it will become a buildable lot that you can then market and sell potentially if you choose to or not. And so this is, again, this is not the first church that we've dealt with. We're not treating you different than any other church or any other applicant who would file this application and ask for the same thing.
So can I try clarifying in another way? If the person who purchases the lot does not develop it, is there any requirement that person do this grading or whatever else? If it's just going to be left as farmland. which is the intention of one of our applicants, let's say, for the property.
Yeah, so our conditions of approval will be on the application itself. If somebody sells to someone else and how you all work out, you know, the who does what, that's a private matter. I'll just say very, very succinctly, we don't care who does the improvements, but the conditions are going to be to the owner, you know, assigns, you know, future parties, et cetera. So, and the triggers are likely going to be tied to a building permit. So, you know, if you sell this, someone purchases and they understand that there's certain improvements. I mean, again, from our standpoint, we're like, you all work amongst yourselves and figure that piece out. We're not, you know, saying you, Bob, you're for always, you're the one that has to do the improvements. It'll be assigned to the property.
Okay, if it's assigned to the property, then there's no cost to us in the short term, and there's no reason for us to grade in the short term, correct?
If you're not going to construct anything,
we're not.
Right. So
there may be, sorry.
I don't get.
Yes, so just to explain and to add to what Patrick said, we typically condition these improvements with a building permit. So what that means is that you have this requirement on paper, but until you decide to pull a building permit, which could be 10 years down the road, or maybe never, the requirement doesn't kick in.
Well, hold on 1 second. So the other thing I was trying to say there was, Josh, I heard you speaking about a forest conservation plan. Are there going to be any requirements prior to platting that would, you know, is there any type of easement or anything that you were describing that may need to be adjusted? Because that could be a requirement that would need to be done, not tied to a building permit, but tied to the record plat.
The
I was
final,
just-
go ahead.
Yeah, my comment was just in regards to the frontage improvements and the
Frontage
path.
improvement, right?
And the path. I was not speaking about any other requirements. The path and construction of the path or grading is normally tied to release of a building permit. Now, separately, Josh can speak about the forest conservation requirements and the triggers for those, which are different. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, the final forest conservation plan is required to be done prior to plat. The follow through of the requirements is going to be tied to any construction activities moving forward. But whoever is going to be moving forward with it will be tied to whatever conditions are being placed now at time of the plan.
So I just wanted to be clear. I know we're talking about the frontage improvement first, but the way you were responding, it made me think you were thinking all requirements. So I just want to make sure it was clear that some would be required prior to plat, some would be required prior to building permit. The frontage improvements would be building permit. We wouldn't make you do any like preliminary grading work or anything like that prior to that.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Do you have any more questions, Mr. Marco?
I didn't, thank you, though. I think that was all.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Coordination Division, and this is your DRC meeting for Kingsview Knolls. Your lead reviewer is Jeff Server. The purpose of this meeting is for you to ask any questions based upon the comments you received last week. I'll ask Jeff to highlight any of the major issues and then turn it over to the applicant. And this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Christina, and good morning, everyone. This is the Kingsview Knoll preliminary plan application. It is zoned R200. It's located within Germantown, and it accounts for approximately a little under 2 acres in land to be developed. The major issues with the application as they are right now is looking at the proposed density. So looking at lots 30 and 31, they're proposed to be pursued as standard development. They meet the criteria under R200. There is a concern on lot 30 that with dedications, it may not quite account for the minimum lot requirements. It's just a few hundred square feet over the minimum. And as the dedications are not quite shown the way we'd like to see, there is a question to make sure that that actually can meet that requirement. Where it gets a little fuzzy or fuzzier, I guess, is in lots 2, 3, and 4. Those are proposed to be optional method, and they are within the TDR4 overlay zone, and they are also zoned R200. As proposed, it's being shown as optional method cluster development. It doesn't actually meet the criteria for that within the overlay zone or within the R200 optional method. However, there is a provision if you were looking at this as MPDU optional method under the TDR overlay, it is possible to pursue this. So that's something that needs to be identified. And it was a question that we had as well, is if perhaps there was a typo and maybe it was intended to be MPDU versus cluster. So again, I'll let you respond to that. The other concerns are the location of the open space, the common open space within parcel A, that actually would need to be contiguous and more located in a manner that's publicly accessible. As shown right now, it really looks like it becomes privatized for lots 2 and 3, and it's isolated from the other proposed residences. The other big comments are the LOD that's being shown on the extension at Kings Hill Road cannot be located on the existing property, the other residences. So right now they're being shown on other people's property, and that isn't possible. The other thing is there are 2 homes being shown. It's number 14012 and 14008 as future homes. Those should not be shown right now unless they are a part of this application. So those are the major big picture issues within the application. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to you, Dean.
Okay. Dean Packard, I'm civil engineer, and to my right is Serini. He's the applicant. I guess I'll go through my questions on the preliminary plan and then follow up with 1 or 2 questions for Doug on the forest conservation plan. As far as Marie is concerned, there's no center island, so we should have the 90-foot cul-de-sac, per the standards to meet the turnaround for fire access, and it will be height restricted. So, and with a two-story with a basement, we'll be in compliance with the 27-foot rule but we will be well within the 150 feet anyway with the cul-de-sac that's compliant. On page 2, for the area master plan, there's we understand the typo that you referred to with the MPDU. We can correct that. That's no problem. The bicycle pedestrian connectivity, we take a few issues with that because I understand that the sidewalk, around the whole cul-de-sac, I guess that's one question I have because I did it around half the cul-de-sac. But I believe that the road, should be under tertiary standards as opposed to the 60-foot secondary standards. I think there's an issue with the way it's drawn now with the 60-foot. There's a 60-foot, oh, it's not dedicated yet, so it's a 60-foot parcel that was part of the original deeds. It doesn't really, there's a couple problems. One, it doesn't accommodate PUEs. So that generates an issue. If we were able to establish that it be a 40-foot tertiary residential street per MC 210-01, the right of way would be reduced to 44 foot, which would the extra space would be comprised in an 8-foot PIE PUE. The 6-foot sidewalks, if they do go on both sides, they would be up to the right-of-way line because you want a 6-foot pad and a 6-foot sidewalk. So that would encompass the 12 feet proposed. And one of the requests is to have 2 foot of maintenance, and that could be in the PIE PUE, and there would be no sidewalk in the PIE PUE, and that would be a logical progression to solve the issue with providing PIEs and PUEs for the proposed right of way, and would give us room. The other issue is we're trying to provide stormwater management, and that's why I only had sidewalk on one side, because on the north side of the road, we had bioswales, and that was the reason why the sidewalk wasn't wrapped all the way around. And if you look at the neighborhood has no sidewalks. And even if we provided a sidewalk, it would be a sidewalk to nowhere, which has occurred in many occasions. And in the past, DPS had waived that after the Planning Commission approved it. But we're just trying to think this through ahead of time to make sure that there's a solution that doesn't have to be, adjusted later or whatever. We have it figured out. Now on the roadway on the south side, there's a neighbor that I've personally spoken to, and right now he has a kind of pond in his front yard, and I had told him that we have, when the roadway comes in, it'll have to be lifted up in order to make the grade establishment work, and we would have to put a intake culvert on his side, and that would relieve his ponding issue. And he was interested in working with us on that. Right now the LOD is shown going onto his property, and that's kind of the logic behind that we would have permission from him to grade on his property to remove the low point and pass the water. There's on the north side, there's another gentleman, I call him VJ, is the owner. He is, I'm not sure exactly how it's kind of progressed with him, but I understand, as I get to with Doug's comments, that there are trees on the property line that will need to be somehow addressed with him to get either a permission letter or at least to remove the trees. And we had proposed to, since the water naturally transgresses across his property, to keep the water going in the same place. If he doesn't grant a drainage easement for that, there is an alternative to take the water through a pipe out to Kingsbrook Drive and dump it into the swale. So those are some of the issues that come up with that. And and extending the sidewalk out to Kingsbrook Drive is, I haven't really looked into that because I just got these comments on Friday, but it's, right now it's an open section roadway with and that could become a complicating factor to extend the sidewalks out, and not affect those roadways. The sidewalk, in the comments was also suggested to go out from the cul-de-sac directly to Schaefer Road. The properties at 24, 25, and lot 26 that were mentioned are all private properties. And even though the LOD is shown going across 25, it's in a WSSC easement. So I know for a fact that WSSC is going to allow either a path dedication or path easement to overlap their roadway, and it'll be on a private property. And in addition, another comment was to extend the sidewalk from the open space out to the adjoining subdivision to the south. And the Kingsview Village subdivision. My plant, which one? Coachman Road. Yes, so that would have to go across private property and would require some type of easement or path dedication to extend that, and I'm not sure how that would happen. As far as the notation about the location of the open space, I agree with the fact that it was isolated, and I provided a alternate sketch as to how we would propose to realign the open space in the lots for 2, 3, and 4 to allow public access to parcel A, the open space, so that it's accessible by the community off of the road into the neighborhood. It is and for lot 30 or 31, however it's notated on the plan, we've corrected the issue also about the 100-foot requirement at the building line, to meet the standards. So we've tried to address the sketch that I provided that, I can send to you by, digitally, but I provided to you that I have in front of you now, is set up with a 60-foot right of way. I thought about this over the weekend, and that's when I came up with the 44-foot idea, but we can provide full dedication with the sidewalk and, PUEs on site as to what we decide on as far as what the right of way would be, with the full fire department access turnaround of 90 feet. So that goes through those comments, and I think, as far as Doug's comments regarding the forest conservation plan, they somewhat overlap these comments about grading on the adjoining property and needing permission letters, and common trees that I mentioned before would need to be agreed upon by both property owners to be removed or impacted. And I agree with change mark 10 that the trees along the proposed road that are pretty much on the right-of-way line, it would be difficult, if not impossible, to save them. And the only question I really have is you said I haven't had a chance to research it, but go through section 22A, 01, 09, A and B. And are those just standard FCCP requirements, or is there anything specific that you are referring to?
I noticed that a few things seem to be missing. So I mean, when I see that, I let all consultants know, please go through this section of the regs, because at 22.000109 outlines what the preliminary and final FCPs need to show.
Sure.
So just go through there, check it off, see, yeah, got this, got that. Don't have this, let's put that on there.
I think Purnell is on the line. He's my engineer, and I'm going to sit down with him and go through everything point by point to make sure that, as you know, we comply. So it's not any different than the other jobs we worked on. We have to go through the list and make sure all the boxes are checked and are complied with. But there's some questions on the table that we're not going to solve here today. And that's why I thought that that we would need, additional time to maybe open a discussion with the time we have left, or to set up a meeting to more of a work session to work out some of these details, because that it involves Billy and DOT and probably stormwater, to make the stormwater work, and Doug with the trees. Everything has to be coordinated to put together in a workable plan that's thought through, but so that we're not at site plan, fighting ourselves, trying to fix things that we didn't talk about and discuss here and shortly thereafter. So is there, that's kind of my spiel. So is there any response to anything that I said, other than we'll look at it and think about it, or, in regards to the proposed tertiary or the lot layout? I know we can't sit here and say it all makes sense, because everybody's got to think about it and digest it and come up with ideas or arrows to shoot at me. So
relative to the lot layout, it's something I will have to have some time to take a look at.
Sure.
So I think your suggestion of a work session next week makes a lot of sense and would be a good direction to move. In regards to the street proposal, I'll turn that over to Justine.
So for the street specifically, I know that when the concept pack came, they use classifications that were used like a very long time ago. But right now, the classifications that we use are not those classifications, and per the code, then the classification will fall under a neighborhood street and will require a 60 feet of right of way. Specifically for that. And then when it comes to the sidewalk, the complete city design guidelines actually require sidewalks on both ends of the road. And that's something that we will need you to show on the plan. I think that maybe Sandra or DOT can chime in and maybe talk more about about what I just said, specifically about that.
So I guess,
Billy, you're not muted. It doesn't show, but try again, Billy. No, can't hear you. I'll talk. So how much right of way do you have along the straight section? Like, is there a plan that shows the actual right of way?
well, the existing right of way in the existing neighborhood is 60 feet.
No. Right where it says sheet 5. And there's
Yeah.
an LOD. I want to know how much, is that your property, or are you gaining property from adjacent property?
The parcel where the proposed road is going, which will be dedicated, is 60 feet wide between the north and south property.
Okay, so you have 60 feet. So you need to dedicate that additional feet of right of way. Okay. Billy, can you talk now?
Am I on now?
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I just switched to the phone. We had the same comments as far as the right of way. The tertiary standard is the old standard. And per complete streets, we need 60-foot right of way. Also, the right of way around the cul-de-sac kind of just tapers down to just around the paving, but so that would have to be a full width dedication for the standard cul-de-sac. And I think you addressed our drainage comments, that you're going to pursue getting a downstream easement from, if you do choose to drain across to the north. If not, you'll have to keep the drainage in the right of way, which would mean adjusting your street grade in a way that you could get the drainage to the east to the Kingsbrook Drive intersection, and then it would flow north to Schaefer Road.
Okay. And if we're going down the path of the 60-foot right of way with the local street standard for which used to be secondary road, with the sidewalks on both sides, how does that extend to providing sidewalks
You have to
outside of
show-
our?
So usually with an open road section, so complete streets really only addresses closed section. So with an open road section, you actually have to go back to the old standards and use secondary residential street, which is actually, I believe, like 78 or 74 feet, something like that, which is a requirement. So going down to 60 feet, you have to show us that it'll work. You either provide a swale and drainage area and then show us the sidewalk and street trees and everything else and shows that it fits within the 60 feet of right of way.
So are you saying the 60-foot would have to be closed section?
No, but if you can't make it work with this, with 60 feet, then yeah, it would be. So it's not a requirement, but you need to show us that things will work.
If it drops to a 60-foot standard, would it be able to utilize a 20-foot paving section if it's open section?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the 20 feet, I think that, you're not gonna have parking, so I don't know that it's only a 1 foot difference. It's only between 20 and 21 feet.
But I guess my last question was maybe for the planning staff is to, how are they going to pursue the extension of the sidewalks off-site, off the tracked area site to across private property and potentially in the right of way to Kingsbrook Drive?
Well, that's your job, in my opinion. You need to show us that you can put the sidewalk all the way along Kings Hill Road up to the corner of Kingsbrook Drive. And if you can't, you need to show us why it won't work.
Okay, I can do that within the right of way.
Yeah, it should be all within the right of way. We can't require you to obtain additional right of way.
I was going to ask maybe a clarification about, so you said that for the path that we draw from the cul-de-sac to Shopper Road, that is only private property.
Yes.
So the lot 25 is not property of the developer, like of the applicant, I'm sorry, the application. Yeah, heard the right. Okay.
The applicant happens to own that lot.
Yeah.
But it's encumbered by a WSSC water and sewer easement. And that's why the LOD is extended across the property for the required connections. And overlapping easements with WSSC is usually a no-go.
So that easement is not shown on this plan, and it should be shown.
There's a dashed line, but it's not labeled, so it needs to be shown.
That specifically, pad, I mentioned it can be a sidewalk, it can be a pad. But it's specifically because it provides connectivity to the bus stops that are there. And then it also provides connectivity to the entire development that you're proposing, but also to the other houses that are more on the south edge. So it will provide like a clear connection to the proposed development and to the existing houses that are on the south, specifically around Coachman Road.
Well, you can't just put a path on somebody's private property without a path dedication, or some type of easement. And because if it's not a dedication, it encumbers the private property owners for maintenance. So, and encumbering WSSC with maintenance, I don't see how that would ever happen, because you can cross their easements, but you can't parallel their easements and, along connection to Schaefer. And I know that, I mean, common knowledge of the neighborhood, people kind of walk down the grass shoulder to the bus stop, to get anywhere and everywhere. And I know that doesn't really answer what you're asking me, but that's kind of the fact of life of how everything is. And going across Coachman, that's a, you're asking people to tear their fences out and encumber them with the maintenance of a path. And I just don't see how that can happen really, in the common sense world. So it's not that we're, objecting, on, kind of, technical basis. We're objecting on a private property, entitlement issue. And with WSSC, because I don't know if they're on the call here today or not, but I've dealt with them for 40 years and I know how
We are.
flexible. I know how
Yeah,
flexible.
No, we are not. When it's easement, no, because we use it for maintenance. So we don't allow anything over our easement, only like you said before, crossing.
We can talk about this later to explore other possibilities specifically about this, because we will really want the connection from the proposed development to Shaw Road specifically for dimension reasons that I'm not before.
We were looking for the shortest distance possible. That's why we suggested to do that sort of shortcut. And it seemed like there was the room opportunity to do it. If that's not the case, then we need to look at other ways to get there. Maybe around the proposed cul-de-sac extension around the other way of the block. Because it is important, it is an important connection.
Well, I understand the need and desire and requirement to provide sidewalks, within our tract area. And that would certainly get people a lot closer, on a concrete sidewalk than what we've proposed. And we can discuss this. But I just wanted to throw out things because I know what WSSC was gonna say, so, because I've been there, done that, 100 times.
Yeah, that's helpful. We didn't see the plans labeled with that, so.
Okay, I
That's
understand.
also
I understand, and we'll provide you all the information you need to, further your judgment. We can discuss it in more detail at a follow-up meeting if we could schedule something.
Okay. Is there anything else that needs to be discussed before we schedule the follow-up meeting?
I'll follow up with you with a review schedule and all the details as far as.
And it's just, overall summary is that there's a lot of site constraints and we're trying to work within those site constraints to the best of our ability. But there's a limit to what can physically be done.
Who do we need in the follow-up meeting besides planning? We need DOT?
Yes.
Who else?
Stormwater man.
Stormwater? Who else?
So transportation.
Okay.
Yeah, our team, yes, our team.
Okay.
Just before we finish here, just to clarify, the WSSC easement that's shown there, is that existing or is that proposed?
There is a existing 25-foot WSSC easement, and there is a requirement to expand that to 30 feet.
That's shown going up and down on the page, right? From the cul-de-sac.
I know people can't see this online, but I'm going to point it out for your benefit. This is the line between 24 and 25, and this would be the 30-foot easement here. That would go all the way through the cul-de-sac. And which we'll identify and label and show for the follow-up meeting. that goes back to the beginning where I said my magic box is getting low on fuel. So
You're trying. All trying.
we'll try harder.
All right.
Appreciate.
Thank you, everybody.
So will the follow-up meeting